Nick, why don't we start with the question that we get asked all the time, which is how you switch from being a prosecutor to being a defense lawyer, whether that's hard, ethically, morally, personally, or, any other way.
I actually found the switch to be incredibly easy. I'm not really sure why that was. I loved being a prosecutor. I was totally committed to being a prosecutor, and I thought I was really, doing good and serving justice. And I did wonder, whether going back and doing defense work after that would be as rewarding. And as it turns out, it's at least as rewarding, I think, as when I was a prosecutor, and I never had any trouble, I think, making that change. And part of that may be because what we do isn't so different in a lot of ways. We often represent institutions as opposed to the actual individuals being accused of criminal conduct. And you really feel there that, like, you're investigating, you're trying to identify who did what, did anyone break the law, and if they did, what does it mean for the company? So there is very much of a truth-seeking and commitment to doing good. That's part of our work too.
I found that the most fun part of being a prosecutor was the investigative work, following the facts, trying to understand who's telling the truth, who's not, sort of putting it all together. And we do so much of that here in our internal investigations that it is very similar. And that still, to me, is the most fun part of the job. We tried that case together in the Eastern District, which was right after you left the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you were so freshly out that every court officer and every judge thought you were still a prosecutor. And I think you did too, because I think once you walked into the courtroom and sat down at the wrong table.
And I kept getting looks from the judges as to why I was sitting over with the defendant as opposed to the other side.
Yeah. The stakes are always high, right? So the cases tend to be very important to our clients, whether it's individual or a company. They really are paying close attention to it, which leads to a lot of high profile exposure to, CEOs and general counsel and boards and the real leaders of companies. But it also is sort of a fascinating study in psychology, right? You see people under stress. How do they react? How do they take it? Some people are calm. Some people kick the wastebasket and storm out of the room. I mean, you see it all up and down.
Some people kick their lawyers. I remember when I came to Sullivan & Cromwell as a junior associate, coming to see you and talking to Karen and the other former prosecutors in the office and telling them, that was the path I wanted to follow. I wanted to learn as much as I could here as an associate, that I wanted to also go and be a prosecutor for, at least a few years. And I remember throughout, the firm was so supportive, and everybody who I spoke to about it really encouraged me to do it, wrote me great reference letters, and kept in touch with me when I was gone. And it's such a great way to come up, because I think those of us who have done it, you feel like you grew up at Sullivan & Cromwell, know all the traditions and the culture of the firm, and yet we did also get to spend a few years outside at seeing a bit of the wider world and the way law is practiced elsewhere. And I wouldn't trade that time for the world. It was a great path to follow, and I'm encouraged that we have so many recruits who come and so many associates who come and want to do the same thing. And we've had such great success over the years in seeing our associates go and work at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we're always hopeful many of them will come back.
The travel is such a hallmark of the practice. I lost my passport to the office the other day because I had to get new pages sewn in it so I could have enough blank pages to get a visa to go to Russia.
I think we've all had the experience where you go to work one day thinking it would be just like any other day, and before you know it, you're stopping off at home on the way to the airport to grab a change of clothes and your passport with extra pages to get to where you need by the next morning to get some investigation going. So it always seems to be urgent, and it's never quite predictable, but I think that's part of the reason why we enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
It is kind of remarkable when I think back on all the places I've been, even in just the last few years. London and Paris and Frankfurt and Amsterdam and Rome, into Milan, and then, farther abroad, Dubai and Riyadh and Singapore, Tokyo, Puerto Rico repeatedly, Mexico City.
I've done the same. Had a big investigation in Oslo, Dubai, London. I've been to Australia a few times on business, which is always fun. And, you and I will be overseas again together in a couple weeks. So it continues like that. It's great travel.
And, we complain sometimes, but the truth is, it isn't always such hardship duty. We get to fly, pretty well most of the time and stay at some great hotels and have some really good meals and meet really interesting people. So it's not always convenient, but it's always interesting. One of the things that for me has made working here, working with you and working with everyone in our group so rewarding is the fact that we are so close, outside of the office as well. It's become something of a running joke how many of us in the CDIG group live in Brooklyn Heights. I tell recruits, by the way, it is irrational if you work at Sullivan Cromwell to live anywhere except Brooklyn, because you can see it from the office. It's one subway stop away, and it's a short cab ride, and it really makes it's a wonderful neighborhood to live in. It also makes life very easy. But outside of the office, so many of us live in the same neighborhood. So many of the associates, so many of the partners, our kids go to many of the same schools. And it's a very nice thing to have this outside of work, interaction that we have too as friends, as partners, as colleagues, and as neighbors sometimes.